Hi, Crime Junkies. I'm your host, Ashley Flowers.
And I'm Britt.
And I have been dying to tell you this story. It is a story about a serial killer. Not one of the ones we've been asked to cover time and time again, like the ones who have gotten endless coverage as people pick apart their psyche and motivations. This is about someone I'd never heard of. Someone who police suspect of terrible things because somehow, wherever this guy goes, tragedy follows. But they have never had enough to prove the things they so strongly suspect. So this man, either one of the unluckiest people I've ever heard of, or a cold-blooded killer, is living among all of us. He could be our neighbor, or the guy we pass at the grocery store. Someone we know, someone our listeners know. But remember, Crime Junkie life rule number 1, you never really know anyone, ever. But it's my job to make sure you're well informed. So buckle up, kiddos. This one's a doozy. I'm talking about the cases that have been linked to a man they call the Lewis-Clark Valley Killer. And I'm going to talk about who police think that man actually is. I don't know what was in the water in the fall of 1982, but authorities in the Lewis-Clark Valley, where Washington and Idaho and Oregon all meet, they were underwater with cases. Between August 31st and September 19th, in this area where not much happens, 4 people had gone missing. It started with a 2-year-old little boy named Ricky Barnett, who was visiting his grandparents' farm in Grangeville, Idaho. And while workers were unloading a delivery of chickens, Ricky vanished into thin air. Almost 2 weeks later, on September 12th, 2 young women went missing while out running errands in Lewiston, Idaho. 21-year-old Christina Nelson and her stepsister, 18-year-old Jacqueline Miller, who goes by Brandy. Then, just as the 12th of September turned into the 13th, before anyone even knew that Brandy and Christina were missing, 35-year-old Steven Pearsall vanished after he was dropped off at the local Civic Theatre in the same small town. So, by the 19th of September, when 18-year-old Jennifer Vincent and her car disappear somewhere between her boyfriend's dorm at Washington State University and her home in Spokane, Washington, people are panicked. Authorities, especially in the valley, are drowning. And that's not even speaking of the cold cases they've had looming over them for the last couple of years. The disappearance of a 12-year-old girl in 79, and then the murder and dismemberment of a young woman who was found in 81. So something is happening in this area. Captain M. Dwayne Taylor, chief of detectives for the Lewiston PD, said in an article for the Spokane Chronicle that he had been on the force for 19 years and has never seen anything like this. The peace and illusion of safety that the Valley residents used to feel is shattered. Parents don't let their kids walk to school alone anymore. People are locking their doors at night. I mean, it's like they're being hunted by this faceless, nameless boogeyman. And that doesn't change after Jennifer Vincent is found. And there actually is an innocent, albeit scary, reason for her disappearance. She had gotten into some kind of accident on her way home, and she was found pinned in the wreckage of her car with a broken back and hypothermia. And that was nearly 4 days after she went missing. So, at least for her case, there's no connection, seemingly, to any of the other victims. And after she gets found, the local papers, who had been picking up all of the 5 most recent cases and lumping them together, they let Jennifer's name fall off. Eventually, Ricky Barnett's name disappears too. So I'm not really sure why, especially when I started digging. I found some reporting to suggest that he wasn't the only 2-year-old boy to go missing in that area over a span of a couple years.
What?
Dude, I don't know. The papers dropped all the reporting on those kids. There's almost nothing. Don't worry. I'm not about to. Stay tuned. I'm having our reporters dig in, so watch out someday.
Yeah.
But in putting Jennifer and Ricky's cases aside, this new theory began to emerge. Though police were adamant early to the press that all these cases were considered to be unrelated, it was hard to ignore the fact that 3 of these people who are still missing, the adults, all went missing on the same night from the same teeny tiny town. So tiny, in fact, that it turns out Steven Pearsall actually lived just a few apartment buildings down from Christina Nelson. Kristina actually held the part-time job as a janitor at the theater that Steven went missing from before Steven took that job over a year earlier. And Kristina and Steven went to the same college.
So they knew each other then?
Yeah, I mean, they definitely would have at least been familiar.
Like in the same circles.
Right. I don't get the sense that they were like close or hung out. But let me lay out for you the separate circumstances surrounding Kristina and Brandy's disappearance versus Steven's, so you can get a sense of what police are working with here. So Kristina's boyfriend, this guy Bill, called her at her apartment at around 8:30 p.m. on the night of September 12th. Now, he's planning to come over that night, so I'm sure they're just like coordinating or whatever. And she told him that her stepsister Brandy was going to be over in a little bit and that they were going to go to the local Safeway grocery store. Now, Bill ended up falling asleep, so he didn't make the trip to Kristina's until the next morning. But when he got there, it had to feel a little like deja vu-y, because on Kristina's front door was a note written to him saying, quote, "Bill, walk down to the store with Brandy, back in a few, come on in and get comfy. Okay? Chris. Keys in our hiding place." But even though the note was presumably left for him the day before, when Bill goes inside, Kristina's not there. And it doesn't seem like he's worried. Probably just assumed that he'd missed her, he'd see her later. So after waiting, he had to leave to go to work. But when he came back that night, neither Kristina nor Brandy were there. But the note that Kristina left still was.
Which is a pretty big red flag.
Yeah, but for some reason, alarm bells weren't ringing for Bill just yet because he didn't go out and try and find her. And I'm not sure if this was normal for them to just kind of be missing each other a lot or what. And in his defense, everything in the apartment indicated that she was planning on coming back when he got there the first time. She left a light on, her cat was still there, even her purse was sitting there. So I think he's assuming that Kristina's going to reappear. They could laugh about being ships passing in the night and just missing each other.
Yeah, and at this point, it's not like the disappearances in the area have started piling up, right? Not everyone's on high alert for this yet.
Right. So, prior to Kristina and Brandy going missing, you had a young kid who went missing 3 years before, then that woman who was found murdered the year before. Both of those very different cases. So, they're not even being connected to each other, much less anything else at this point. And then, we had the little boy Ricky who goes missing right before as well. But
it's so different.
Right. And I don't even know how much pickup his case got before anything started really happening in a short period of time. So it's not where Bill's mind jumps to right away that something bad has happened. Plus, in 1982, I feel and fair, this is a totally made up stat, 60% of trying to hang out with people was missing them in real time and having to try and connect later when you got to your landline.
Because you can't be in contact the way we are right now.
So Bill decides, you know what? He's just going to stay at Kristina's so he doesn't miss her. But when he wakes up in the middle of the night on what is now the 14th, and there's still no sign of his girlfriend, this is when he realizes something more is going on here. So he starts calling friends, family, anybody who might know where his girlfriend was. I'm sure he tried to get in touch with Brandy since the note mentioned her and she lived nearby, but he couldn't find her either. He even ends up going to check the Safeway, the grocery store where she was supposed to go to. Nothing.
They just weren't there at the time, or they'd never even made it to begin with.
I have all the questions. Since her purse was left behind, that makes me think that they never even made it to the store.
But was her wallet in her purse? Or could she have just taken some cash for the few things she needed, left everything else behind?
Wallets were still there. To be fair, I guess she could have just taken some cash. I don't know exactly what they were getting. I don't know if they're going for just we're just going to grab a soda, or if they're going for a full-on grocery haul. So yeah, did she have money on her? Did she throw just a couple bucks in her pocket? I don't know.
But at the Safeway, no one saw them there.
No, which always makes me wonder if they made it there in the first place.
Right.
And it's worth noting that the grocery store at the time, it closed at 10. So if they wanted to make it on time, they would have had to leave before then. And we know the last time Bill spoke to her was 8:30. She was still waiting on Brandy. So it's a little bit of a tight timeline.
Yeah, so between 8:30 and when Bill got there the following morning, they're gone.
Something happens, right. And I also haven't seen anything in the reporting about there being fresh groceries or grocery bags or anything like that in the apartment. So
and there's no signs of foul play in the apartment?
No, nothing.
And just to go back to the note real quick, it was for sure written in Christina's handwriting.
It was hers, yes.
Okay.
So we don't really know when they went missing, but we know for sure that they were gone by the morning or afternoon of the 14th. And not just because Bill pops by then. He also, as he's looking for them, contacts the restaurant where Kristina works, and he finds out that she'd been a no-call, no-show for her shift that day too. And that's the final straw. He knows this is bad. And so from there, he goes right to the police to report Kristina and Brandy missing.
And does their family go with him?
So they actually don't live in town, but when they find out, everyone's just as worried as Bill is. Kristina in particular is one of those super responsible people who would never no-call, no-show. So while Bill is the one who's there and providing the boots on the ground presence in the early days of the investigation, the family is completely in the background.
They're on board.
Yeah, giving that extra push. Now, police do take the report right away, and this is when they start retracing a lot of the steps that Bill took, right? They look at Kristina's apartment. They try and retrace the paths that the women might have taken, to and from Safeway. But they cannot find a single person who saw them, who interacted with them, nothing. Just poof, gone. And within a couple of hours of their last interaction with people or contact with people, all of a sudden, Steven Pearsall vanishes too. So investigators learn that Steven's girlfriend dropped him off at the Lewiston Civic Theatre at around 6:30 p.m. on September 12th. Steven is very involved in this theater. He plays clarinet, he works on sets, he is the janitor, and I believe that he was even in a show or two. And so when he's dropped off, he was either going to be there practicing playing his clarinet or working on a set or something. Now, he does that. Everything's fine. His girlfriend picks him back up at 9 because they have to go to this going away party for another staff member of the theater. They're there for a couple of hours. And then on what is now the 13th at midnight, the girlfriend drops him back off at the theater. So he's going to play his clarinet. He also has some laundry that he wants to do there too. Now, a few people see his girlfriend drop him off. One was even a police officer. So he is 100% back at that theater by midnight.
But alone?
So there was apparently one other guy who'd been there that night, and he said he saw Steven before Steven had left at 9 p.m. And then he says he fell asleep. And in fact, no one ever saw him leave the theater. And just like Kristina and Brandy, he's never seen again. When Steven was eventually reported missing and police go and search his place, it was a lot like Kristina's in that it looked like he would be right back. I mean, he left his car parked outside of his place. He left behind an uncashed paycheck for $179, which is no chump change in 1982, especially if you were planning on leaving, which it's clear Steven didn't do. At least it's clear to those who knew him. Now, a search of the theater didn't turn up anything either, other than finding Steven's clarinet in the orchestra pit. There's nothing. Interestingly, too, even his duffel bag that he brought that he was going to do laundry or whatever, that's gone.
So at this point, I mean, they have to be thinking that everything is connected, right? Or otherwise it's this wild coincidence.
Well,
wait, did Bill come under suspicion at all?
Oh, I'm sure police looked at him briefly. And Brandy also had a boyfriend who, same thing. I mean, I think they probably looked at. But neither of them are considered suspects. Actually, the first real suspect they had in this case, and this goes to what you were saying about them being connected, the first real suspect was Steven Pearsall.
Oh.
I know, turn of events. I am popping on to start a conversation about a case. I cannot get it out of my head. A true mind bender. A huge twist your way. You gut check all your assumptions. Because this is a case that starts like so many before.
Hi, crime junkies.
Now, I don't know exactly when police started to have suspicions about Steven possibly being more suspect than victim. I mean, they sure aren't saying anything like that in the early reporting that I'm able to pull on the case from 82 and 83. But everything changes in March of 84. That's when the decomposed, mostly skeletal remains of Kristina and Brandy are found at the bottom of a hill about 35 to 40 miles outside of Lewiston.
Were they still doing searches for them?
No, I actually don't know if they ever did formal searches. Like, the way they end up getting found, it's truly a miracle. There was this kid who was out at like the top of this hill looking for cans, and like the wind catches his baseball cap and he loses it, and he goes down this hill to chase it. That is how they get found.
What are the odds of that happening?
And that's what I'm saying. Like, different hill, different day, different time of day.
Different kid, different cap. I mean...
Yeah, like they might still be considered missing people, but they're not, right? Like, so they're found on March 19th of 84. By March 27th, they've been positively identified as Kristina and Brandy. And then boom, April 1st of 84, the Spokesman Review publishes an article saying that police are looking for the third missing person, 35-year-old Steven Pearsall. Now, they don't call him a suspect, but it's clear to everyone who hadn't already picked up on police's suspicions by now that, like they're looking for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I guess my question is why? Like, what would his motive be?
They don't have one. Like, honestly, at this point, I think they just see the opportunity, because I think one of the paths that the girls could have walked to get to Safeway actually went past the theater. So, you know, they're seeing this big, tall, older guy who has a military background going missing on the same night as these two young women. And I think they kind of just assume that he was responsible. Maybe it wasn't planned, right? Like maybe everything, whatever happened, something spiraled out of control. And that's why Steven left with like literally just the clothes on his back and the ones in his laundry sack. But right away, anyone who knows Steven was like, absolutely no. They would tell you there is no way he could hurt anyone. Steven was like everyone's big brother at the theater. He was this gentle giant, always looking out for everybody, making sure that the theater was a safe haven for everyone involved. Plus, sweet Steven, they say that all you have to do is look at what was left behind to know that he is the victim of foul play too. Because remember how his clarinet was found in the orchestra pit? Mm-hmm. Like, everyone's like, he loved that thing. Like, that thing was his baby. Like, if anything is telling you that your theory is wrong, like, he would never leave that behind. So his loved ones are frustrated because not only is their missing loved one getting wrongly painted as a suspect, but in doing so, they're afraid that like police and authorities aren't putting the same resources into solving this case, because if he's the victim, if he succumbed to foul play, but they're not considering that, like, how are you taking the right steps?
They're not just not considering that, they're considering that he is the suspect of foul play.
Right. And by the way, like, even if you like, you know, go with their theory, like you didn't mean for something to happen or whatever, like if you're gonna go on the run, like you think you'd at least take your car for a little bit and like cash the paycheck. You're gonna need some money on the road. So nothing points to Steven leaving willingly. Nothing points to him hurting Kristina and Brandy.
And going back to Kristina and Brandy, were they able to determine how they died?
Oh yeah, so I didn't get into that. The pathologist determined that they had been strangled. And even though they didn't appear to have been bound in any way, beneath their bodies were these like lengths of something that early days they described as like clothesline cord. Now, they also found with the women like clothing, lip gloss, jewelry, and there was a bra shoved into the mouth of one of the skulls. So motive for whoever did this seemed to be sexual, or at least like had a sexual component to it. But because of all the time that had passed between when they went missing and then when they were found, I mean, the chances of them retrieving anything to prove that or point to their killer was like virtually zero in 1984.
Nothing then to officially rule out Steven either.
No, but honestly, they don't end up needing it for that reason. You see, a little perspective goes a long way in cases when investigators zoom out and take stock of everything. And when they do that in this case, they find reason to start side-eyeing someone else. So remember that guy that was sleeping in the theater when Steven was there?
Yes, I knew there was more to him.
There's a lot more to him. So his name is Lance Voss. And what are the odds that he not only shows up in this case, but also in one of those cold cases from the area? That one from 1979, where a 12-year-old girl went missing.
What?
So back on April 28th, 1979, in Asotin, Washington, which is like just across the river from Lewiston, 12-year-old Christina White goes to her friend Rose's house because the two were going to go to the fair that was in town together. Mom knows she made it to Rose's house because she actually walked her over there, like dropped Christina off with her bike and waved goodbye to her as she was at the front door. But a few hours later, so around 2 p.m., Christina had called home and asked her mom to pick her up. She said she wasn't feeling well, which wasn't entirely out of the ordinary. I guess Christina had a habit of just not drinking enough water. She would get overheated pretty easily.
Kids be kids.
Yeah, but like her mom at the time was home with her little sister. She couldn't just like pack up and leave at that moment. So she's like, okay, Christina, listen, run a towel under some cold water, put it on your forehead, put it on your neck, just try and cool off. And then when you're feeling a little bit better, like, just come home. I'll keep an eye out for you.
But she never came home.
She never came home.
Did she decide to just go to the fair instead of heading home?
So you asked a complicated question. So the current investigator thinks no. But I don't know if anyone can be 100% certain without knowing where Christina is now. You know what I mean? Police reports from back then are minimal. I mean, there's a lot that has been lost to time, if it ever existed at all. Detective Jackie Nichols, who is on Christina's case today, told our team that there was like this turf war going on between the police department and the sheriff's department when it came to this case, and they were battling over who had jurisdiction, even though, by the way, when Christina first went missing, it doesn't even feel like anyone was quick to jump on it. Like, they wrote her off as a runaway, they said, because her mom was divorced.
What? What does that have anything to do with Christina being a runaway?
They're basically like, oh, it must be a terrible home life because your mother is divorced, so you're going to leave.
Okay.
It's like complete BS. Like, yeah, sign of the times.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Great. Her friend, Rose, did she, like, say what happened to her?
Well, she wasn't there because when they talked to Rose, it turns out, so again, they were planning on going to the fair. Rose ended up leaving as planned when Christina wasn't feeling good. So she like left, went to the fair. Christina is there at this house. And when she left, she just assumed Christina was going to join her later or whatever. Now, Rose's little brother might have also been home while Christina was there. But it seems like police don't speak to him much. And like even today, he's never sat down for like a proper interview.
Wait, why?
Well, he was only 10 back then. So like at the time, I don't know if police didn't know if he'd be much help. I don't know if like...
They had this runaway theory, so like...
Did they? Right. Or did like, you know, parents come in and say like, no, you can't interview my 10-year-old. Like that's too traumatic. Again, like, I don't have a lot of reports from back in the day to, like, reference, like, what they were even thinking at the time. To me, this is, like, I feel like he holds all the answers, but, like, if he's not talking, also, why is he not talking? And I know Detective Nichols wants to talk to him still, like, to this day, but she says she's waiting for the right time or, like, you know, if you're out there, like, you're welcome to come forward.
Yeah.
But all that to say, so little brother, maybe home, maybe not. Rose is already at the fair. There was someone else who had very close ties to this household who could have come by. Like, theoretically, we don't know if he was in the house that day. But guess who Rose's mom was dating?
Lance Voss.
Lance Voss.
And what's his story around this?
I don't know. So, like, without the reports, it's hard for me to tell what he said or even if he was asked at all about that day or his whereabouts. What I know is Christina and her bike are never seen or heard from again. The only thing even connected to her that ever surfaced were some school papers that were found on the outskirts of a farmer's field shortly after she disappeared. And when they get found, they were in pretty good condition, so it looked like they'd only been out there maybe a day or two. But Detective Nichols is actually not sure if this find is even significant. And that's for a few reasons. I mean, for one, it wasn't just Christina's papers. There are actually some from another friend. Two, the papers aren't all in one place. Like, it doesn't feel like they were like staged there. They're sort of scattered, almost like they flew out of someone's car, like passing on a nearby road. So Detective Nichols kind of wonders if maybe, some of Christina's and this other friend's schoolwork was in like the friend's family's car. Somehow like it got mixed up, fell out, whatever. And we talked to a woman named Gloria. She is Christina Nelson's cousin. So that's how this whole thing like got started for her.
Okay.
She has been deep in this case. I mean, like really along with Jackie Nichols, Gloria is the one who brought this back to life. And she says that the field where those school papers were found is one that Rose and her mom kept their horses at. So all in all, Detective Nichols doesn't think that those papers are like the key to cracking this case.
And is there any direct connection between Lance and this property?
No, but you can see that there is like a really strong connection between Lance and Kristina. And that's where I'm like, do the papers mean anything? I don't know. But like, going back to our scoped out, just like him being the last person who was in the same place as Steven before Steven disappears, Lance is suspected by police to potentially be the last person in the same place as Kristina when she disappeared. And when you look at the other cold case that happened between Kristina and then the three from Lewiston at the theater, there isn't a tight connection to Lance, but I don't know, enough circumstantial things to make you go, huh. So the other case is that of 22-year-old Kristin David. On June 26, 1981, Kristin goes missing while riding her bike from her dorm at the university in Moscow, Idaho, to her parents' house in none other than Lewiston. Like Kristina, both she and her bike just poof, gone. But unlike Kristina, Kristin gets found. 8 days later, on the 4th of July, her body is found in pieces in the Snake River. Her body parts were wrapped in newspaper and placed in black garbage bags. Now, she'd been in the water for some time, so finding forensic evidence was pretty much a no-go. They don't know who took her. They don't know where she was killed. They don't know much of anything. The only clues they had in her case were the newspaper that she was actually like wrapped in. Mm-hmm. They were local papers from Lewiston dated April of 1981. And police got a couple of sightings of maybe a big brown van that was maybe stopped on the side of the road with her and her bike. But they never figured out who the driver was. Though, and this is one of those very loose connections to Lance Voss, it's been speculated that maybe he had a brown van at the time. I guess he had a lot of vehicles, but we're saying brown van not officially confirmed. Though what's more interesting is that Lance's job took him specifically from the valley to Moscow, which includes like the same route that Kristin would have taken on her bike the day that she went missing. And Kristin had actually worked at the Lewiston Civic Theatre for at least a little while at some point. So she theoretically very well may have known Lance Voss, although we cannot 100% confirm that. So again, let's scope out 30,000-foot view. In 1984, you have this witness who was with Steven right before Steven went missing. Now you realize that his name has come up in other cold cases. Very suspicious.
Yeah.
And listen, even early on, they recognized that his story about being at the theater always kind of stunk a little bit. So while police are still looking for Steven, right after Kristina and Brandy are found, they also bring this guy, Lance, back in for questioning. And the first time they talked to him, it was just as a witness. This time, it is as a suspect. And this time, his story gets even stranger. Lance's story originally was that he was working with Steven on the set and he'd left at around 9:30, which we know Steven left at 9, so fine, sure, could make sense. But then in another version of his story or events, he claimed to police that he'd spent more time at the theater that night and that at some point he'd been working up in this attic doing rigging or whatever for the curtains or something, and then he accidentally fell through the ceiling, which is possible because if you go up to the attic, there are these catwalks that you have to stay on. Otherwise, the ceiling's just plaster. So, I mean, it would be easy to fall through. So in this other version, he's like, oh, I fell through this thing. I'm not super hurt, but I just needed to lay down for a second. And I ended up falling asleep until like 5 a.m. And he's like, oh, when I woke up, I immediately was like, oh God, I got to get home because I never let my wife know that I was going to be staying there. Oh, and by the way, he tells police, like, while I was like there and sleeping or whatever, I did hear the phone ring at some point, like, but I was like, I think this is like when he was like dazed or half asleep or whatever, but he's like, I didn't answer it.
Convenient if his wife says she called looking for him and he didn't pick up.
Exactly. Anyways, he says that on his drive home, as he's like going, he realized, you know what? Like, there's no point in rushing. My wife is probably already at work by this point. So never mind. I'm going to go back to the theater. So again, this is like the kind of weird story he's told them before when he was a witness. And that was back in 1982. Fast forward to now, 1984, and he gives a little more detail. So he reiterates that he's working at the theater, but then he says between 9 and 9:30, he leaves and he drives to this pizzeria called the Red Baron to have a couple of beers and watch a movie. He says that the movie got out at 11, which is when he left the pizzeria and went back to the theater. This is presumably when he fell through the ceiling, that whole rigging thing, laid down, sleeps till 5 a.m. But he's still in all of this, claiming that he never saw Steven back at the theater. And, oh no, I never saw the missing women either, by the way.
So he's saying he was aware enough to like hear the phone ring, decide not to answer it. But don't worry, he definitely didn't interact with the missing guy that we absolutely know was there at midnight.
Okay, yes, but it's even more bananas than that because when they dig in, they realize that the couch that he says he's like asleep on or half asleep on because he hears the phone, whatever, is right by the door that Steven would have entered from, like when his girlfriend dropped him back off after the party. So suspicious. But there are other parts of his story that don't line up either. Like he says he goes to this pizzeria, he leaves when the movie's over at 11. When investigators actually check, they find out that the movie didn't get out at 11. It got out at midnight. And they find out that one of the paths that the women might have taken to get to Safeway, right? We're talking about Kristina and Brandy. There's a path that just so happens to cross right in front of the Red Baron, where he's now telling them he was. And to me, in the perfect time frame, right? Like we know Kristina is talking to her boyfriend Bill at 8:30. She's waiting for Brandy. We know that the Safeway closes at 10. So she would have walked right by the Red Baron as he says he's sitting there.
Right.
So investigators can't help but wonder, could Lance have seen the girls from inside the Red Baron, somehow lured them back to the theater, and then Steven walked in on something happening, and then maybe Steven was just like collateral damage?
Which is an interesting theory, but then where is Steven? Like, they found the girls.
And yeah, Steven was not with them. One theory has always been that maybe he's still in the theater. Like when I did a TikTok on this case, asking locals to tell me, like, what have you been hearing? What I kept getting from people is that there's this rumor that he is in the wall of the theater. Now, were they telling police that at the time? I don't know. I feel like if he was in the wall, he would have been found. Like the theater is abandoned and condemned now, but it wasn't then. Like the smell alone, I feel like would have gotten some attention from people.
Yeah, did they ever search it?
I don't know how much they were searching for a body early on.
Versus like evidence of a missing person and their last like interactions and movements.
Right. And I know after Kristina and Brandy were found, they were going to the theater trying to find evidence of a crime scene. And I haven't told you this yet, not just because of like the Lance connection and Steven or whatever, like the theater makes sense, but I told you there was like cord found under Kristina and Brandy.
It was like a
clothesline,
yeah.
Well, that cord looks an awful lot like the rigging, specifically the type of rigging that Lance said he was working with at the theater that night. So everything in these three cases just like keeps coming back to the theater for them. So I know that they conducted luminol testing in the basement by the back door, but they never got anything that they could work with because it turns out that the theater walls were painted with lead-based paint, and like lead will apparently light up just like blood under luminol, which I did not know. Fun crime junkie fact. So unfortunately at the time, like they can't say if anything happened there. But no, they're not like taking down walls looking for a body either.
But when they're looking for evidence, I'm not sure I'd expect like blood at the crime scene if we know that the women had been strangled, right?
Yeah. But like we don't know what happened to Steven. So,
Right.
and you don't know if no, they didn't have skull fractures as far as we know or anything like that. But you don't know.
There was like a laceration from like a defensive wound or something.
I think they're just looking for anything that can be helpful.
Well, what would be helpful is finding Steven. Like that, I feel like that would be like a huge puzzle piece in all this. Did they ever actually check the walls or whatever? Like run down some of these local rumors that like you at
This is
least
what I'm
have
saying.
heard?
Yeah, would love to know. If they checked the walls, like there's nothing in it in the police documents. But like I said, I know the theater was condemned and it recently just got purchased with plans to turn it into a senior center. So with those renovations, any evidence there is soon going to be lost.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I don't know, and maybe I'm just being like too optimistic, but I'm like, oh, also does this mean like as we're tearing it down, if we're careful enough, can something be found?
We could find evidence,
Right. But not finding Steven, I think, is one of the biggest hangups in this case, because I think prosecutors are like, well, a defense is going to have a field day with this, right? Because until you can prove, like with a body, that he's a victim, I think a defense attorney is going to paint him as an alternate suspect. It's just not a slam dunk, even with how suspicious Lance looks to police. Like after that second interview where it was clear they were suspicious of him, he lawyers up, refuses a polygraph, stops cooperating.
I get that this is not like a slam dunk case, but going back to your like zoom out 30,000 foot view, I mean, there's something going on here.
Yeah. And I mean, if you think that now, just wait, because I haven't even told you what Lance's history was before the crimes in the Lewis-Clark Valley started happening. Lance moved around a bit before he settled in the valley. He grew up in Chicago. He was out in California for a little bit. Like, dude kind of bounced around. And that is something that Gloria has really dug into. She traced Lance's location over the years and cross-referenced other homicides or suspicious deaths in those areas. And she found a few that, like you said, Brett, feel like a little more than a coincidence to me. First was the unsolved murder of Diane Taylor in Chicago. Diane was 8 years old when she went missing on August 1st, 1963, while heading home from the YMCA. Her body gets found 2 days later. She's been brutally beaten, sexually assaulted, and stabbed. Now, while researching Diane's case, Gloria found that a 15-year-old Lance Voss was her YMCA camp counselor and lived in the same neighborhood as Diane. What's wild is I'm not even sure if he was interviewed at the time. Now, our team tried reaching out to Chicago PD to see where the investigation stands today, because Detective Nichols told us that they were really interested when Gloria brought this to them. But when we reached out to Chicago investigators, they would not talk to us. So I'm not sure if they have any evidence to test. I don't know if they've tried talking to Lance about this. Like, I truly know nothing about where things stand in that case today. But it's odd, right?
Yeah.
So that's Chicago, 1963. Fast forward to June 1972, Lance is now 24 years old and living in California. 17-year-old Antoinette Anino is found in the early morning hours floating in the water near the shore of Santa Cruz. Police quickly rule her death as suicide by drowning because they found out that the night before, she and her boyfriend, her brother, and her brother's girlfriend were like all out on the boardwalk together when she and her boyfriend get in this argument. The two of them leave their friends to go sit on the beach and talk about it, but apparently she was really upset. So her boyfriend got up, left her alone, telling her, listen, you can come join us again when you're calmed down. Now they don't see her again. And when police hear this, they're like, oh, she must have been so upset that she threw herself into the ocean to drown, even though she was found nude and all of her clothes were missing. Never found.
I'm sorry, what?
I know. Now, here's where it gets freaking weird.
Weirder than this?
Weirder than this. Her body was taken to Willow Glen Mortuary in San Jose. Later that same night, Lance Voss gets caught breaking into this mortuary with a flashlight, with a hunting knife, and with a camera. According to the owner's daughter-in-law of the mortuary, Lance gets caught and he tries to explain this whole thing away. He's like, oh, I'm just trying to get in to see my girlfriend one last time.
And Was Lance the boyfriend that she had been arguing with?
No, he wasn't her boyfriend. And you can't even say that, like, it was another.
Was there someone else there?
Antoinette's body was the only one in the mortuary at the time. So he gets charged with attempted burglary, which ended up being reduced to a misdemeanor at the time. And again, like, nobody's connected him to a Chicago thing. This seems like the only thing that has happened. So, like, I understand how maybe it got, like, pled down or whatever. First-time offense, a freaking weird first-time offense. When we talk about, like, paying attention to things that people are doing, breaking into a mortuary with a camera, a flashlight, and a knife.
That feels, like, different than attempted burglary to me, but what do I know?
We should, again, we need to be paying attention. All the red flags. So there's that.
Yeah.
Then the last case that came up in Gloria's digging is the death of 25-year-old Claudette Volova in Lewiston on July 27th, 1987. Claudette was also involved with the Civic Theatre, according to people who knew her. And despite Lance being married, the two were having an affair. According to one of Lance's friends, the day of her death, he had walked into her apartment and found her body after what was eventually ruled a suicide. Now, I'll say up front, like, from everything I've seen, it doesn't seem like anyone questions the validity at this current time. Like, everyone seems to believe it really was a suicide. He's just connected to her. They were having an affair.
But it's just so weird.
Right. I mean, this is what you have, right? Like, the thing about this case that hooked me from the beginning is I think it's one of the first instances that I've come across where everyone connected, they seem to think that there is a serial killer at work. They seem to think that they know exactly who it is, where he is, but the public at large knows nothing about it.
Yeah.
And there is this guy out there living his life, and people who come in contact with him may never know the things that he has been connected to, coincidentally or not.
And so much time has passed, though. Surely there's got to be something in one of those cases that could connect them to a killer, the killer.
Listen, they've been trying. Detective Nichols has done physical searches over the years looking for victims. I mean, she actually even trained her own cadaver dog to conduct searches for Christina's remains because her department didn't have the funds to pay for a dog search. And listen, I'll tell you that, like, not all of the searches she's done have been directly related to Lance. Like, she's looked at other people, other places, whatever. But a good number of them have been connected to him because, by the way, dude owns currently, like, a few homes and pieces of property around the valley, including, and I think this is important, a home that was right between Christina's house and Rose's house at the time Kristina went missing, and that house was vacant at the time Christina White disappeared. But even when she looked at that place and all the other places she's looked at, Detective Nichols, she's turned up nothing. What she has gotten over the years, what our reporter got as she was interviewing people for this episode, what I've gotten in my DMs, are stories upon stories from locals who have personally had creepy or just downright terrifying experiences with Lance. And I'm not going to go over all of them, but the one that I can't stop thinking about is described by Detective Nichols in an episode of Cold Valley called Person of Interest. So I'll set it up for you. This woman, she's looking to buy a house, and one of the homes that she was looking at was owned and being sold by none other than Lance Voss. So he's giving her this tour, and throughout it, he's like hyping up the basement. Like, I've done all this work down there. You really got to see the basement. You got to go down in the basement, like, highlight of the home. Mm-hmm. So eventually she's like, yeah, okay, well, you know, I've seen the house. Let's go down to the basement. She started towards the stairs first with, like, him following behind. But before they actually got to the stairs, she, like, turned around to tell him something. And when she turned around, she says that his, like, arm was up and he, like, put it down really fast and sort of, like, hid something behind his back. And she asked him, she's like, what are you holding? Mm-hmm. And eventually he pulls something out. Okay, there's something in his hand, and it is a finial, which is basically like this, like, decorative, like, top of a bedpost.
And when did this happen?
I believe this was after all of the murder/disappearances that we've talked about. But this thing, like, freaked her out because she felt like he was going to hit her with it. And to add to the weirdness, he started asking her questions like, does anyone know you're here? Which, like, Thankfully, lots of people knew she was, or she at least said, everyone in my life knows I'm here. That's what I would be doing. I'd be like, I'm leaving. Everyone knows I'm here.
Everyone I know, they know.
I'm calling them right
address,
now.
They know I'm leaving. Yeah.
And then, but as soon as he knows that, he's doesn't seem interested in showing her the basement anymore.
JK, basement's not a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Now, according to our reporting, Lance moved to the East Coast in 1999 and is still there today. We did try getting in contact with him for this episode, but he did not call us back. So listen. If you have your own story or knows anything, something, whatever, Detective Jackie Nichols wants to talk to you. No tip is too small. She is technically only the lead on Christina's case because of jurisdiction stuff. So that's probably the one she has spent the most time with. But it is almost impossible to look at just one case without looking at the other. So she is fully read up on all 5 cases, and she is unofficially taken over Kristina, Brandy, and Steven's cases too, who most people now call the Civic Theatre 3. And right now, she's looking into anything that can be tested for DNA, like the ropes from Christina Nelson and Brandy's bodies, underneath them. And it's worth saying again, it's not just about Lance. She's also actively looking into serial killers who were operating at the time. She's trying to rule people in and out based on where they were, their MO, whatever.
Does she unofficially have Kristin David's case too?
She does not. The FBI has jurisdiction there.
Oh.
Kristin has always been the outlier. And even though I think she'll forever be tied and lumped in with this group in the Lewis-Clark Valley just due to proximity and local lore, most, if not all, investigators actually believe that she was not killed by the same person who killed all the others. Mostly because the MO is just so different.
Well, yeah, and she was dismembered, right? That's a whole different ballgame.
And dismembered by somebody who knew what they were doing. Someone authorities believe probably did it before. I told listeners at the top, this was one of the first stories I'd come across where there was a serial killer the public didn't necessarily know about. But it was not the last. And actually, I've been tracking another man who may be responsible for the murder and dismemberment of women across the country. And Kristin David could very well be one of his victims. And listen, I'm not ready to completely lay that story out yet. Me and a bunch of the reporters are working on this. We still have a ton of investigating to do. But I do want to give everyone a peek into the investigation because the number one thing I'm looking for right now are similar cases. They won't let me into VICAP. I keep trying, whatever. So what I need is our millions of listeners to tell me if there are cases local to them that match this same MO. So with that, what I'm going to say is do not miss next week's episode. Set your watches or join the Crime Junkie fan club. You can listen to it early. I'll let you listen to it right now. I'm going to drop it at the same time. I'll have a link to sign up in the show notes. But in next week's episode, I'm going to dive deep into Kristin David's case and bring people in on what is, for us, kind of an active investigation. So I'm not giving up. Detective Nichols isn't giving up either. But she recognizes that she is not going to be able to solve these cases without the help of the public. Her hope is that someone who may have been too scared to come forward back then will feel comfortable doing so now. And that's exactly why coverage of these cases are so important. And thankfully, we're not the only ones. The Snake River Killer podcast has also done a deep dive into these cases. But the more we talk about them, we create more of an opportunity for someone who knows something to hear it and to come forward. So if you have any information about the disappearances of Christina White and Steven Pearsall, or the murders of Brandy Miller and Kristina Nelson, or even Kristin David, you can contact the Asotin County Sheriff's Department. We're going to have all of that contact information in the show notes. You can find all the source material for this episode on our website, crimejunkiepodcast.com.
And you can follow us on Instagram at Crime Junkie Podcast.
We're going to be back next week with a brand new episode. But don't forget, if you want to listen to Kristin David's episode right now, I'm dropping it early in the Crime Junkie fan club. Go to crimejunkiepodcast.com/fan club.